Particles actually get incorporated into the resin matrix. It's not just a simple mixing process, is it?
I have a feeling it's more complicated than that.
You're right. Those filler particles need to be treated with a coupling agent, usually something called silane.
Selene.
Think of it as a molecular bridge that ensures the filler particles bond properly with the resin matrix. Without it, you'd have a weaker, more brittle composite.
So it's like adding an ingredient to make sure the batter sticks together.
That's a great way to put it. Oh, we're not done with our composite recipe just yet. We also need initiators and accelerators.
Okay.
These are the components that make the composite actually harden when exposed to light or a chemical reaction.
So these are the key to making it set. How do they work?
So initiators absorb the light energy and trigger a chemical reaction called polymerization,
Right.
which basically causes the resin monomers to link together and solidify. And the accelerators, they work alongside the initiators to speed up that process.
So it's a team effort to make the composite go from a gooey paste to a solid restoration. I bet the amount of these initiators and accelerators can affect how quickly the composite hardens.
Absolutely. Dentists can fine-tune the curing time of the composite by adjusting the concentration of these components.
Okay.
It's another level of control they have over the process.
Wow, it's amazing how much science and chemistry go into creating these seemingly simple tooth-colored fillings.
It really is. And we haven't even touched on things like pigment stabilizers, other additives
Oh, wow.
that can be incorporated to further enhance the composite's properties. But I think we've covered the main ingredients now, so let's move on to the actual process of placing a composite restoration.
Right.
It's where all this knowledge gets put into action.
All right, let's head to the dental chair. What's the first step?
It all starts with cavity preparation.
Okay, we talked about different classes of cavities earlier, but what are the specific things dentists consider when preparing a tooth for a composite restoration?
The main goal is to create a clean, retentive surface for the bonding agent to adhere to.
Okay.
Unlike amalgam fillings, which rely on mechanical retention, composites depend on a strong bond with the tooth structure.
So it's less about creating undercuts in the tooth and more about making a surface that bonding agent can really grab onto.
Exactly. We want to remove any decayed or damaged tooth structure, smooth the enamel margins, and sometimes create slight bevels, to increase the bonding surface area.
And the shape of the preparation itself, does that matter too?
Absolutely. It needs
Yeah.
to be designed to prevent the composite from being dislodged under pressure.
I see.
Rounded internal line angles and smooth transitions between walls, they help distribute stress more evenly.
It's like sculpting the tooth to create the perfect foundation for the composite.
Yeah.
Now, what about keeping things dry during the procedure? I know moisture can be a big problem when working with bonding agents.
You're absolutely right. Isolation is crucial. Even a tiny bit of moisture can interfere with the bonding process and weaken the restoration. That's why dentists use something called a rubber dam to isolate the teeth they're working on.
Ah, yes. The rubber dam. I remember seeing those at the dentist. Not the most glamorous thing, but definitely important.
Exactly. It might not be pretty, but it's essential for creating a dry and clean working field. And in addition to the rubber dam, dentists use other tools like cotton rolls, air syringes, suction, to keep the area moisture-free.
So it's a constant battle against moisture.
It is.
But why is dryness so important for composite restorations?
It all comes down to the chemistry of the bonding process. Remember that hybrid layer we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, moisture can disrupt the formation of that layer, preventing the bonding agent from properly, intermingling with the tooth structure.
Okay.
It's like trying to mix oil and water. They just don't want to bond.
Ah, that makes sense. So a dry field is essential for creating that strong, inseparable bond between the composite and the tooth.
Precisely. And once we have that dry field established, we can move on to the next critical step, applying the bonding agent.
Okay, this is where all that knowledge about dentin bonding we talked about earlier comes into play, right?
Exactly. Choosing the right bonding agent and applying it correctly are crucial for ensuring a long-lasting and durable restoration.
So let's break down the process. What are the key steps involved in applying a bonding agent?
The first step is usually etching the tooth surface with phosphoric acid.
Okay.
This removes the smear layer, exposes the collagen fibers in the dentin, and creates microscopic irregularities that the bonding agent can lock onto.
Okay.
Think of it like roughing up a surface to create more grip.
So it's like giving the bonding agent something to really grab onto.
Right.
What happens after etching?
Well, the etching process needs to be controlled very carefully.
Okay.
Over-etching can weaken the tooth, while under-etching can prevent proper bonding.
Right.
After etching, the tooth is rinsed thoroughly with water to remove the acid and any debris.
So it's all about precision and timing. What comes after rinsing?
Depending on the type of bonding agent, a primer might be applied next.
Primer.
The primer is like a base coat, preparing the surface for the bonding agent. It helps ensure the bonding agent flows evenly and penetrates deeply into those microscopic spaces created by the etching process.
So it's like prepping the canvas before you paint.
That's a great way to put it. And once the primer is applied, we're finally ready for the bonding agent itself.
Okay, this is the moment of truth.
Right.
What exactly is the bonding agent and how does it work its magic?
The bonding agent is typically a low viscosity resin
Okay.
that's applied to the etched and primed tooth surface. It flows into all those microscopic irregularities, interlocking with the collagen fibers and forming that crucial hybrid layer that we talked about earlier.
So it's like filling in all the gaps, creating a seamless connection between the tooth and the composite.
Exactly. The bonding agent is the key to achieving a strong and durable restoration. It acts as a bridge between the two materials, preventing leakage, microcracking, and, ultimately the failure of the restoration.
Wow, it's amazing how such a tiny layer can play such a big role. It's like the foundation of the entire restoration.
You got it. Without a proper bond, the composite is vulnerable to all sorts of problems. It's the bond that makes the restoration truly functional and long-lasting.
Okay, we've prepped the cavity, created a dry field, and applied the bonding agent. I'm on the edge of my seat here. What's next? It's time to finally place the composite material, right?
You got it. This is where the artistry of dentistry comes in.
Okay.
It takes a combination of skill, precision, and a deep understanding of the material's properties.
I bet it's not just a matter of squeezing the composite into the cavity and calling it a day.
You're absolutely right. There's a specific technique involved to ensure the composite is properly adapted, contoured, and cured.
Okay, let's break it down step by step. What's the first thing dentists consider when placing the composite material?
First things first, shade selection.
Okay.
We need to choose the appropriate shade of composite to match the patient's natural teeth. This often involves using a shade guide to compare different shades under various lighting conditions.
It sounds like picking the right paint cutter for your walls.
Yeah.
You don't want it to clash.
Exactly. The goal is to make the restoration blend in seamlessly, so it's virtually invisible. And it can be quite challenging, especially when you're dealing with multiple shades in a single tooth.
Right.
Natural teeth have these subtle variations in color, and recreating that with composite takes skill and artistry.
I can see how that would take a keen eye.
Yeah.
So once we've found the perfect shade, what's next?
The composite is typically dispensed in small increments onto a mixing pad or directly into the cavity.
Okay.
We then carefully place it in layers, using instruments to adapt the material to the tooth structure.
Why in layers? Can't we just put it all in at once?
Most composite materials have a limited depth of cure, usually only a few millimeters at a time.
Okay.
So to make sure it hardens completely, we place it in increments and cure each layer with a special light.
It's like baking a cake. You wouldn't want to try to bake a giant cake all at once. It would cook through properly.
Right.
So we've got our layers in place and cured. What happens next?
Now it's time for sculpting. We need to contour and shape the composite to match the surrounding teeth.
Okay.
This involves using various instruments like rotary burrs, hand instruments, abrasive discs,
Right.
to refine the composite shape and create proper contours.
So it's not just about filling the hole, it's about recreating the natural anatomy of the tooth.
Exactly. And this is where a deep understanding of tooth anatomy and how teeth bite together, occlusion,
Yeah.
that's crucial. The restoration needs to look natural A and D function properly.
Right.
If it's not contoured correctly, it can interfere with the patient's bite, leading to discomfort and other problems.
It's like being a dental sculptor, blending artistry and science. And once we have the perfect shape, what's the final touch?
Polishing. This gives the composite its final shine and smooth surface. Helps prevent plaque accumulation and staining, too.
Oh, okay.
We use progressively finer abrasive discs and pastes to achieve that smooth, natural luster.
So it's like buffing out a scratch on your car, getting rid of any rough spots, and making it gleam.
Exactly.
And just like with car detailing, I bet this requires a delicate touch.
You're exactly right. It's a delicate balance between achieving a smooth surface and preserving the anatomical details of the restoration. You don't want to over-polish and lose those important contours.
Okay, so we've prepped the cavity, applied the bonding agent, placed the composite in layers, contoured it, and polished it to perfection. Are we finally done?
That's it. The composite restoration is complete.
Wow. It's incredible